lastly, can you give us just one example of one issue that you want to promote within the Likud Party, within the Knesset?
Okay, so there's many issues that I'm promoting. Maybe I'll speak a little bit about the cost of living problem that we have here in Israel. It is addressed, there's three main fields where the cost of living here in Israel is very expensive, more than the States and more than Europe. One of them is the housing, which we are trying to solve. The second was in transportation, mainly because we have a very high tax on petrol, on imported cars. And the third one is the food prices. And it was a big surprise for me to know that we are some of the most expensive one in the food market. And so I decided to take that and start to study it and learn it. I've got quite a few books. I can give it to you afterwards if you want to read a little bit more about it. And I found out, I'll try to shorten all the research that I've done, but I found out how regulated is our food industry. Regulated, controlled by the government, and that's what's causing all of this increase of money that we need to pay at the end of the day at the supermarkets. And I'll just give you an examples. The farmers now in Israel, and there's a lot of food products and producers who are producing really good, high quality food, and quite a lot of it. And these farmers are bankrupting. The reason for that is in every food industry in Israel, we got a council. It means that the fruit and vegetables got a council, the meat industry have a council, the dairy industry have a council, and you go on to every type of food, including olive oil and honey, and there's just all of these council. And their job is to firstly regulate and monitor those industry, to build a systematic system so that the process is efficient. For example, there's the producer, then the wholesalers, then the sellers, and then the buyers. And they are regulating every single step, and they are advising on the prices that it's going to be sold. They are, it comes to today where they are telling the farmers who they're going to sell it to, at what price they're going to sell it, how much they're allowed to produce. If they want to produce cucumbers or potatoes, they need to get permits. If you want to have beehives and make honey, you need to get a permit. And so they give you a permit with what you're allowed to grow, how much you're allowed to grow, which is ridiculous. 2 years ago, some farmer had to burn tons of potatoes just because he overgrown too many potatoes. Then they're not monitoring the wholesalers who are increasing the prices. They are getting the prices really below the cost of producing those fruits and vegetables, because they're not actually regulating. They're feeding, those councils are feeding from those wholesalers, so they work side by side with them. And then it comes to the point where someone who grows lemons will sell the lemons for 90 agorot, let's say 90 cents.
Yes.
Then it goes through all of these change and the taxes that the council put on them and all of these regulation. And we buy it at the supermarket for 9 shekels, which is like $9.
900 cents. Yes, essentially.
We understand, and this is part of the liberalism that we're trying to apply here in Israel as the young liberals, to stop the involvement of the government, to eliminate those ridiculous councils who are not doing what they're meant to be doing. We know that the government doesn't know how to run the business. Let the farmers run their own business. They'll be able to do it. The more we get involved with it, the less, we just don't know how to do it. And this is the failure of it. And so I'm making quite a few laws about it, working on it. It's in a process, and hopefully we'll be able to do it very soon.
And who opposes what you're doing the most?
Oh, wow. I can't tell you how many phone calls I would get with threats. Actual threats about my positions and everything you can even imagine about. Look, for example, the Fruit and Vegetable Council, which I've got a law to eliminate this council, they earn 180 million shekels a year, which in Israel terms is also, it's massive. And so the people who are working in these councils and the people who are feeding from it, why would they want to eliminate that? But who's paying those 180 million shekels? It's the farmers. It's the public. And the farmers are paying it by taxes, and they are bankrupting. We are going to destroy the farming here in Israel. We will not be able to get good produce, and the prices will still stay high. And so, I mean, I took it upon myself to work on it and see how we can reduce it and eliminate it. There are many who opposes it. It's small groups, interest groups, people who feed from them, but I'm very determined in fighting them. And so it's been a long fight, but I'm sure we'll, I learned a few things in the Israeli army, so I'm not scared of that.
You also have some comrades within the Likud party as well, who are members of the Liberalim, the liberals in the Likud.
Yeah.
And I think that also leader of them all is Prime Minister Netanyahu.
Absolutely.
Who's extremely strong.
Absolutely, and he's been very supportive about it as well. Netanyahu has led many legislations and laws through almost any position that he's done towards liberating our economy, towards liberalism. And so, I mean, he is our leader. He's building the roads for us as well, and he's cooperating with us on many levels.
Could you tell us about your activities regarding the land of Israel, which I discussed also moments ago?
Which ones?
The supporting and defending the land of Israel and the Judea and Samaria, for example.
I think the Judea and Samaria issue, I mean, it's just became this, people speak in terms of sismaot, of slogans. And unfortunately, most of these slogans come from people who are just not educated about the history, about the geography, about what's happening here. And I usually would give, I spoke to quite a few officials in the States, in Canada. I was just now for a month and a half going through and giving some lectures speaking about these issues. The issue of Judea and Samaria and the wrong perceptions that people have come from propaganda that is being spread from anti-Israeli and anti, different organizations like that. And I was addressing it. And I think the more we speak about it, and that's why it was important for me to speak about it during my trip as well, the more people realize that the only way to true peace, to true coexistence, is by developing Judea and Samaria. And I maybe I'll take a few minutes to explain that, because I know almost all the parliament members, even I met the Austrian delegation last week, and they tell me, how do you deal with the settlements in the occupied territory of the West Bank? That's a question that comes all the time. And they are saying that this is our barrier towards peace. How do you deal with it? And I tell them this: the settlements are not a barrier to peace. They've never been the barrier to peace. I think Israel have proved time after time that for true peace, for true coexistence, it's not scared of evacuating anything. And more than that, the only thing that actually promoting coexistence and the huge gap of violence and hatred that's been now between us and the Palestinians, the way that they executing terror acts, and a knifing, stabbing of a mother in front of her children, like it happened just 3 months ago. I mean, these events are, you won't see those in almost any Western society. And you ask yourself sometimes, what are these values? And so you need to understand that comes from a lot of incitement, of hatred, that violent, it breeds from a certain place. And this place is the Palestinian Authority. And unfortunately, and I say that unfortunately, I'll give you an example. When I was younger, the way between Kfar Saba and Kalkilia was open. And we would go there to the markets, we would spend time there. The dentist would be there, and they would be able to come and work in our cities. You would meet them day to day. And so when we did the agreements and we build this border, we build a fence. We built a physical fence that actually created social borders and social fences and cultural fences so that we can't meet each other. So you can start picturing this person on the other side as something that they will tell you about school, as if he's been this terrible murderer with horns on your head, describing you like that in their textbooks. And unfortunately, that's what was created when we created these borders. It created the Palestinian Authority used those borders to poison the minds of Palestinians against Israelis. And so the only thing that will be able to bridge this gaps of hatred and violence that is now rooted in many of them is by meeting them day to day, living side by side. And that's what happens in Judea and Samaria today. You have Israeli towns side by side to Palestinian towns. And you go and you shop and you see each other and you work here and there. I mean, when you build infrastructure for Israeli cities, and this is the Israeli government who builds those infrastructure, you build roads. It's not just the Jews and the Israelis who are using these words. The Palestinians are using them as well. And so it's upgraded their infrastructure. Same with sewage system. Same with electricity. Same with water taps into houses. Everywhere that there's Israeli government is constructing for Israelis, for Jews, the infrastructure arrived to the door of the Palestinian people as well. And so their life quality is being raised as well. And the more their life quality is better, the better our life is as well here in Israel. Because then they go less towards violence, less towards terror. There's less of who to blame for all of the problems as the Palestinian Authority is trying to inflict on us. I mean, those industrial area that you see around Ariel. What are those industrial area? It's, after years, and I've seen that before there was the borders as a very young child, because my father, he knows everybody. We used to go to Shechem, to Kalkilia, anywhere you can imagine. Today I can't enter there. And those industrial areas in Judea and Samaria, it's also an opportunity. And it's an opportunity for Jews to work with Palestinians day to day. They have food together. How can you hate someone you work and you speak and you talk about your wife, and then they'll go to this one's bar mitzvahs and they will go to this one's wedding?
And then the BDS movement tries to put a label on those very products where Israelis...
They try to boycott them and destroy them, because I think that they understand that this is the way to peace and coexistence as well. And it is... I mean, you can see it on the Palestinian Authority. They failed in every kind of aspect. They were giving money to build infrastructure and a good education system and industrial areas. And what have they done with this money? They've used it for terror, for hatred, for bombings. That's what they...
And to line some pockets.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we can see that. And so unfortunately, they have failed in every aspect. And those industrial areas where the Palestinian works, they own 5 times more than what they would earn in the Palestinian towns. 5 times more. What does that mean for an average Palestinian? It means that he can take his kids to school. He can put food on their table. Yes. And so who are they going to blame now for their poverty or their uneducated children? They can't, because they actually are being... their welfare is going higher. His kids can actually afford to go to universities. In Ariel universities, you have Palestinians who study there. I mean, what an amazing opportunity is that? And so obviously, the extremists, they will try to sabotage that.
Right.
And so we need to change the conversation. People need to be more educated about this issue, because the only way to bridge the gap and the hatred and the violence is by actually practicing coexistence. And this is what the settlements in Judea and Samaria are doing with the Palestinian towns as well. I will invite you even to come with me to a good friend of mine who lives in the Jordan Valley. You'll see him to entering area A and B to different villages with nothing, because they live together, they work together side by side. And so it's incredible to see that they don't hate Jews. And that's a big problem for the Palestinian Authority. Who are they going to blame in the failing system of them? So I think we need to come out with this message. People need to understand it more and to learn it more.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to say your answers make a lot of sense. Many of us as Christians, we can easily find the religious argument for Jews to be here, but this idea of coexistence, and it just makes logical sense. What you're explaining is you're giving us reasons to how to talk with our friends and family who may not be so religious, to give them logical, really basic common sense reasons.
Well, it's just understanding our geography, it's understanding our history, and the more you're knowledgeable, the more information you have, the more you understand the Israeli reality.
Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.